into the stage, who is I guess, producer is what we would call you, a film producer, and she lives in California. Are you in Hollywood?
No, I'm in San Luis Obispo, 4 hours away.
All right. Well, yeah. So we have the on the East Coast here in Washington D.C. government is the business. On the West Coast, entertainment and storytelling is the business. And
Absolutely.
Sky, really excited to have you here today to talk about your film and how it can be used and how it's being used to connect the generations and inspire people. But before we dive into that, let's get to know you a little bit better. How did you come about what led to you having this illustrious title of film producer?
Well, actually, I was a business major undergraduate. I took a photography class for fun my last semester in college and just realized that was where my passion lied. And for many years, made a living as a travel photographer and an educator. I was a university professor at Cal Poly State University in San Luis Obispo, which is what brought me to San Luis Obispo, which is a beautiful city on the coast. And had never really done any filmmaking and really delved into it out of a personal passion. And I can talk about that a little bit more when I show some images to back it up. But that was kind of how it all evolved.
Oh, really cool. Okay, so now let's dive into what led you. So folks, we're gonna be referring to the website, and I'm gonna drop it into chat right now so everybody can see it. We'll be referring to the website for a couple of reasons throughout our discussion. The title of the film is called Lives Well Lived, but tell us what led you to producing this film, and then what's the film about? I've watched it. I really like it, which is why I wanted to have you on here.
So would you mind sharing the trailer? I think you have access to that, and then I can dive into answering those questions, but I think it'll set the stage for my answers.
Great idea. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click over to this is the website here, Lives Well Lived. And then we've got the trailer here. So I'm going to expand that. And about how many minutes is the trailer?
It's about 2.5 minutes.
Okay. All right, folks. We'll just buckle up, but this will be a good way for us to kick off.
I think you have to rewind it to the beginning because it's right now it's not at the beginning.
Yeah, I will. Here, hold on a sec.
I did everything the way I thought I should do it.
Okay.
And I don't know what brought me this.
Hold on.
You might have to reload that page.
Yeah, let me do that. Let me just reload. Okay. I always remind people we have technical difficulties these days, but we solve our problems pretty quickly. Okay, so here we're going to watch the trailer.
My definition of a life well lived.
That's a really interesting question.
I mean, I just lived my life one day at a time, and I did everything the way I thought I should do it. And I don't know what brought me this far. Only God knows. Maybe I still have something to do.
Life plays with you, doesn't it? You have to take it, and you have to battle it.
We all had to wear these around our necks from Vienna, and I was standing there trying to be very brave.
We were taken out of our homes, we had to leave everything, and we could only take what we could carry.
The whole civil rights movement was a big thing for me. I would be on the picket lines all the time.
An Indian chief once said, "You will be remembered by the tracks you leave behind."
The reason we had 9 kids is that I had an oversexed Italian wife who couldn't keep her hands off me. And since I never get headaches, I couldn't say no. My wife passed away 21 years ago. I am still married and always will be married.
My friends, they said, "Oh, I'm getting too old, I can't do this, I can't do that." And I said, oh, free with that. If you say, I can't do it, then you won't be able to do it. Just go out and do it.
It's not your numerical age, it's your biological age. So think young, act young, feel young, forget the number.
All right. That's really good.
So
I'll tell you that where the gentleman says that I'll always be married, I tear up every time I see that. I watched this a couple of nights ago just to refresh myself. So you got some great stories there, and what I what I really like, this is me. I know I'm sitting here sort of I'm supposed to be interviewing you, but you saw when you started with the trailer that the individuals profiled on this film have been through some tremendous hardship, loss, grief, and not sort of like this isn't sort of this picture perfect lives that these folks have lived, and now we're celebrating them. It's real lives. It is very interesting.
yeah, well, thank you for that. I really tried to pick people who were everyday people, and I'm going to share my screen, and if it's okay, kind of talk a little bit about how and why I made the film.
Okay.
Is that yeah?
That's
so
awesome.
Let me go ahead and do that. So this is my grandmother, who I just adored, and she was an amazing woman. She was approaching 100 at the same time that I was approaching 50. And I was looking for positive role models of aging. And this was about 10 years ago. I'm 58 now, full disclosure. And, looking for positive role models of aging in the media and just not finding it. And everything that I was seeing was really about how we could avoid aging, all the anti-aging creams, and anything that you saw around aging was always the negative aspect of aging. And here in my own family, I had this amazing role model of my grandmother, who was still working out at the gym. And by the way, she didn't start working out until she was 80. So it is never too late to start something new, including going to the gym. And, I thought there have got to be other people out there like my grandmother who are living full and engaged lives, and who could be my role models of what it would be like to age. And so I sent out an email blast to all my friends, family, and all the alum that I've taught over the years I've been at the university. And I said, here's a little clip of my grandmother at the gym. And if you have somebody in your life that is as inspirational as my grandmother, please nominate them for this project. I didn't know I was going to do a film. And I got back the most heartwarming, just wonderful nominations. I was inundated, and it was hard to choose. This is Lucky Louie, who's the man that was married for, his wife had passed away 21 years ago. And so I set out on this quest. I had never done filmmaking before, but now with technology, and I had DSLR cameras that could shoot video, I was like, well, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to learn by doing. That's the university where I teach. That's their motto, learn by doing. So I was learning on the job of how to do this, but I was so passionate about collecting these stories of these amazing everyday people, and just really delving into I wanted to collect their words of wisdom, but also their, as you mentioned earlier, kind of their trials, their tribulations, and their stories of resilience, because these are all people that had, whether it was civil rights or the Japanese internment, or escaping Nazi Germany, which this couple, Marion and Paul Wolf, escaped Germany. And, their stories of resilience, and how were they still such positive and engaging people, and how do you turn that around and make that so that your life can be positive? Because again, I was looking for, what can I do in my own life to age successfully and to be positive and engaged and still wanting to do things. And actually, this is Santi Vasali, who is now 91, and I just had lunch with him 2 days ago. He's planning his next exhibition and the one after that. And I just love that at 91, you're still engaged and have that sense of purpose. And what is the next step? And I was lucky enough that I released the film at a time where film festivals were happening in person. I got to go all over the country with film festivals and to the Girl Scouts, because one of the people in the film, that was a really important part of her life. And that's Rose there, who just, I'm also in touch with her. And then the film opened in theaters, which was amazing, because here's this film that I made from my grandmother, like this connection that I had with my grandmother, and ending up in theaters, and AARP screened it. But really, for me, none of that was as important as the connections that I made with the people that I filmed. I mean, I love them all dearly. And I was so lucky. I feel like my life has been forever enriched by those connections that I made, that I have worked really hard to my new passion is really connecting generations. What can I do to connect generations? And so this is our pilot program that I worked with my an instructor at Cal Poly, where I teach. She teaches the psychology of aging class. And we work every quarter bringing young students who are part of her class, connecting them with older adults. And we watch the film together. Then they use the questions. I had 20 questions that I asked everyone in the film. It's a starting point to get to know each other. And you can see the questions right here. And they use those questions as a starting point for a bilateral connection and communication. And I am lucky enough, when we do this in person, I go in and we have a photo shoot day, and I get to photograph the pairs or sometimes trios of people that have worked together. I just did that last week, and it's so lovely to see the connections that are made in such a short period of time. And of course, what the students learn and the older adults learn is that they have far more in common than their differences, and really the only difference is their age. And it's like any other stereotype or ism, unless we know somebody from that other group, we can have a stereotype about them. But when we get to know somebody, all of a sudden those stereotypes and those isms go away. And it is so wonderful to see that happen in person, and to have a chance to participate in that. You can just see the look in their eyes and how they've really connected in this short period of time. And so I like to say this is just a small fraction of the people that have come together through this project. And we're doing it really all over the country with all different high schools and universities. And because the film is on PBS Learning Media has a website for educators grades 5 through 12 that's free to use, that they can bring this project into their school, and it's got all the core standards that they have to meet. So, it fits right into an educational institution, which is wonderful. So that's really my passion at this point.
I love it. And I had no idea that you literally had no filmmaking background, but
no.
But I also think that is an inspiration in and of itself. And I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and I always tell them, that they'll be very focused on their new business and the direction that they dreamed up with their business plan. But I always say, the really good idea is what you're going to trip over trying to get to that idea. And the way that you talked about coming about this film is exactly an example of that. Is where I'm looking for inspiration, I'm looking to do something, and it turned out that a film was a good delivery model. And it's who would have thought? I mean, I always like to say to my students that the more personal, the more universal the message is. And so I always feel, for me at least, when I work on projects, they need to really resonate with me. It needs to be something that is authentic, that I really feel like I need to get the word out about, but that's also going to help me in some way, because I feel like by helping myself, I'm helping others at the same time. And that was really how this film came about, and even how the intergenerational projects came about. I mean, just a quick aside, when I would film the people in the film, I would usually try and bring a student with me, just really so they could help me carry the gear, but also they could learn about doing this and learn about lighting. And I had a student with me named James, when I interviewed Lucky Louie, who, if you haven't seen the film, I know you're not supposed to have favorites, but he was definitely my favorite. I love that man. And he's very authentic.
Yes, and just so talkative and vivacious and warm and welcoming. He made fresh mozzarellas every day for his daughter's deli. And when we came to interview him, he had some fresh mozzarella for us. And he was just so embracing. And when we left, James said to me, "Wow, I didn't know that older people could talk so much." And
I know.
just, but he didn't have an experience like that with an older adult. And here, because of that, it opened up this space for him to know and understand an older adult and older adults in general in a different way. And I said to him, "Well, do you have an older adult in your life?" And he said, "Well, I have a grandfather, but we don't talk that much. We don't see each other that much." But it was right before Thanksgiving, and his grandfather was going to be there. And I said to him, "I want you to take these questions that we just asked Lucky Louie, and I want you to ask them of your grandfather. I'm your teacher. This is your assignment. This is what you're going to do." And he came back from that weekend grinning from ear to ear, because he and his grandfather wanted to have a connection, but they just didn't know where to start. And by having that list of questions that somebody else had given, so it wasn't like he was coming up with the questions, it was a third party, but it gave them that platform to get to know each other on a very intimate and deep level. And I think that that's sometimes we need to have, that to get us opening the door. And what a gift that was, not just for him, but for me, because it made my day when he told me that.
And you're really illustrating one of the reasons why, if I ever have the opportunity to spotlight a aging in the arts project like this one, I think it's the arts are a door opener that it would be very difficult to open otherwise, mm-hmm. And it's we can talk about things when we go to a Hollywood movie on a specific topic that we would never talk about in our family. Like, it could be a taboo or controversial topic. And I think when we've got a gentleman with dementia who just wrote a play called Dementia Man, and he talks about his experience with dementia. And it's after that you watch that film, that play, or watch your film, you can have a dialogue that you could never have before. And this is really I'm excited for you. Okay, so the now I'm sure there's some people listening to this right now that are sort of saying, "Well, okay, this is great. I like the trailer. Where do I watch the film?" And I clicked on the other day on the PBS link, and it looks like there's not the PBS options are not as plentiful, I should say, as they once were.
Well, you can watch it on, if you have PBS Passport, and I'll put the links on there because it's on Amazon, iTunes, and you can get the DVD as well. So there are so many places to watch Lives Well Lived. But I have a whole set of links that I can put in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
I'll do, and Canopy. If you have a library card, you can watch it for free on Canopy. So I'm putting them all in the chat right now.
You dropped it. Yeah, and
I just dropped it in the chat.
I just discovered that my public library, in addition to like having a platform like Canopy, if you take your library card in Fairfax County, I have a free subscription to Consumers Reports. Had no idea.
I didn't know that.
No, I think libraries are really reinventing themselves to be amazing resources for things like this. So there's definitely some ways to watch the film if you haven't watched it. Now you know Sky and you know the story. So I think that this is going to have even more impact when you watch it and you can kind of reflect on it. But let's dive into also we have a large group in our community that are part of groups, or they may be in a senior living community. And I know that a big part of this is doing screenings and then having a discussion after that. How does that work?
Absolutely. So I don't know if you can put in the chat, there's a take action part of the website. And on there is a discussion guide that you can download, and the questions are all there. But if you're doing a screening, there is a fee to do a screening in a facility. because that helps fund all the stuff that I do for free. And but you can feel free to reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat. But I also have, if you've never done this before, I have a little that little video there with my grandmother at the kitchen. That's a video about interview techniques. And tips and tricks, because I always think it's kind of fun to learn from somebody who's a newbie, because we don't leave anything out. We remember what it was like to start off doing interviews. And so I think that's a good place to start, is if you want to bring it to your community, you can download the discussion guide, reach out to me, and I'll put my email in the chat right now. It's just liveswelllived@gmail.com. And happy to work with you. I've worked with communities throughout the country. I also do screenings at educational institutions, at corporations. We're doing really interesting work with corporations. We've worked with Airbnb, Land O'Lakes, a bunch of different places around the diversity, equity, and inclusion issue of aging, because we think about all these DEI issues, and ageism many times is left off. And through the film and through our Q&A, we do some interesting programming around ageism, and the film certainly helps to set the stage for that. So I'm happy to work with anyone that's interested.
And folks, if you didn't see what I just opened up here, I'll go back. When you go on this, the Take Action, you can scroll down and then you can download the discussion guide. And this discussion guide is great. And I would even say, just like you did with your student there who hadn't watched the film because the film hadn't been made, like, here's the list of questions, that I think are very impactful with the film, but even without the film. And I think the timing on doing this talk right before the holidays, it's like, yes, of course, we want everybody to go out and see Sky's film and support it and get the word out and create intergenerational projects. But I think the other thing is, we just want individuals and families to communicate with each other and minimize the stigma of aging and celebrate all the things that can happen as we move through the chapters of life. And I think just having that discussion is very important.
Yeah, and I'll tell you that we just did our wrap party for the intergenerational project at the university where I teach. And so the students get up and do a really quick PowerPoint presentation about what they learned. And, in addition to the common theme being that they realize they have more similarities and differences except for age, one of the students said, it made me think of my grandparents as people rather than just grandparents. And now I'm curious about their stories. And I will tell you that one of the questions I asked everyone in the film was, do you have any regrets? The biggest regret that people had was not asking a question of somebody who had passed away. And so, we always think we're going to have time to sit down with somebody and ask those questions, and then all of a sudden something happens and we don't have that time. So make that time to ask those questions, and just have your phone you can use as a recorder. Record their voices, record them. I mean, one of the things that I'm so grateful for is that I actually really started recording my grandmother because she was an amazing cook who never wrote a recipe down. And she came out to visit me for the first time when she was 96 in California. She lived in Florida, and we would cook together. We spent a month together for 4 summers in a row, and we cooked together. And I thought I better film her. And I wanted to have not only write it down, but I wanted to have the gesture of her hand, the sound of her voice. And those things are precious. I'm so glad that I have that. And so, take the time to do that. It's so easy with a phone now, with video, to do that, and to have that as a memory for yourself of those people.
Well, I'm really glad we're kind of going down this rabbit hole here, folks, because again, like, one thing that Sky's film can inspire you to do is make your own film. And actually, like, I could see that as being one of the benefits of this project. So I want, one of the things that we talk about a lot on these discussions is moving and downsizing and leaving the family home, and how emotional that can be, getting rid of all your stuff. And so one of the things that I always say is, before your grandmother or you or your parent moves, take your phone, go around the house and have them talk about it before they move any furniture or give anything away, on what it means to them, what that beat up playground in the backyard meant, and what it meant to look out the window and look at the cul-de-sac and stuff like that. And whenever I tell people that, I say to them, I would kill to have a video of my grandparents talking about their home, because that meant a lot to me, but I never understood as a small kid what it meant to them, and to hear their voice and to see them do that would have so much meaning. And so, very few of us are going to be able to create a documentary like you did, but we could, that 15-minute clip of our parents or our grandparents 10 to 20 years from now, what that's going to mean to watch that and see that.
Yeah, and I would say the other thing that I did with my grandmother, I love that idea. That's a great idea. I sat down with my grandmother with her photo album and had her talk about the people that were in the photos, because without that, I would have no connection to who any of those people were. And with that, I had these wonderful stories. And now when I look at those photos and those photo albums, because I have inherited them, I have a connection to that photograph and that family history. And so, because we often, that's also the legacy that's left behind, are all these photos, and what do we do with them? And at that point, there were these beautiful photo albums, but now it's all digital. But it's nice to have had those stories and her insights into why she kept those photos for all those years.
And 2 of our top 10 discussions this year, we've done, I think, 170 this year, are basically what to do with all those photos. They're on that topic. And so often you open this beautiful album that somebody spent a lot of time on, but there's no story. And the generations that are looking at it, and the rule of thumb, I hate to say, the photo experts will say, if you don't know who's in the photo, you can get rid of it. I mean, if you have thousands of photos, it's sort of like, why are you saving this? You don't know this person. We've got an opportunity to know who those people are. So that's another, I think, certainly a thing that's kind of, I love your idea of having somebody go through a photo album. I love the idea of my mom going through a photo album and just talking about it to one of my kids, and me just shooting that as video, and let's see what it could be used for later. Okay. So I really think we've addressed a lot of really cool topics. Talk to me a little bit about these intergenerational projects. Can you sort of give us an example of how one of these would work?
Yeah, so we show the film to the older adults and to students at the same time, and that we have food there, so they get to know each other. We do some roundtable discussions at the end of the screening, and then they have a quarter semester, depending on the university or the high school, that how much time they have, where they have a service learning component part of it, which is where they go in and meet with the students, meet with the older adults, get to know each other, and then they put these wonderful presentations together. And it's just such a gift to see that happen. And I also, in this last year I was part of Co-Generate. I don't know how many of you know about that, is trying to bring generations together. I had a fellowship, and there were so many other amazing intergenerational projects that were going on, that I'm actually in the process of writing a book where I've interviewed 40 people who are doing interesting intergenerational work all over the world, about their story, why did they come to this work, what their organization is doing, and the benefits that they're seeing by bringing generations together. And I will tell you that the biggest benefit has been the loneliness factor, that for both the younger generation and the older generation, bringing those two generations together has really helped in this epidemic of loneliness. And, we need to do more of that. There's so many interesting ways that we can connect generations, from an intergenerational symphony to co-generational housing to a theater project to something in Brooklyn called Stoop Stories. I mean, there's just some really wonderful ways that we can connect generations. So that book will be out in May. It'll talk about my adventures of making the film, but then also the most important part to me is really how do we bring generations together in creative and interesting ways. So be on the lookout for that.
Oh, great. Send that to me so I can get it out to everybody. But Bob asked the question, will we be screening the film today or just talking about it? So Bob, here's one of the reasons why I wanted to spotlight Sky is that we're not going to screen the film. I didn't even ask her about that, but what I wanted is the reason that I wanted Sky on is because she's made this very important film. It has a great message, and I knew that even just talking to her, we could really get outside the box in terms of a discussion on ageism and connecting the generations. However, I am very sensitive to people's time. That's why I'm also didn't want to do the screening of the film, because that would be 2 hours on my Zoom where, and what have you. But I'd be open to that. And out of curiosity, Sky, have you ever done sort of like a virtual screening with a group like ours?
Well, typically what I do is, rather than screen it, because like you said, I'm very sensitive to people's times, and also watching a film on Zoom is not the best way to watch a film.
Yeah.
Is that typically what I will do for an event, and this is true if there's anyone on the call that wants to bring this to their community, because especially during the pandemic, we did a lot of virtual events where people would have a couple of weeks to watch the film, and then we would do the Q&A in between, like in the middle of that 2-week period. So there was a special link that, organizations would have, that they could have people sign up through Eventbrite to watch the film for a limited period of time at their leisure. So they didn't have to watch it during a specific time. And then the Q&A would happen in the middle of that.
Send me the details on that. And Bob, I hope I hope you're okay not screening. I hope you're getting as much as I am out of the conversation with Sky. But I'd be interested in looking into that for 2024, because there's several films that in addition to yours, that I really like. And it might be interesting to see if Positive Aging Community could have sort of like a film discussion and perhaps a book discussion type component to it to bring our community together. The other one that I really like, Sky, and I don't know if you have screened this or watched it, is Gen Silent. It's about the LGBT aging, and it's a documentary style as well, and a wonderful one that would be complementary.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. There's another one that I love called Duty Free. I don't know if you've seen that or not.
No.
Jean-Pierre Regis, all these people have become friends of mine because it's a very small world of filmmakers that are dealing with aging. That was about his mom who was laid off from her job and had a bucket list, and he did that bucket list with her. But also about people getting laid off at a certain point in time. That does happen to people as they age. That is definitely a problem. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful film. There's another one that I love that I think AARP is actually screening, called Alive Inside, which is about people that have dementia, and they are given iPods with little nano iPods with music from their, it's with music from, for those of you that don't know about it, they put music on there from people's past where, it was maybe a critical point in their lives. And then they play this music, and all of a sudden these people who have maybe not spoken for years are speaking, singing, because music affects a different part of our brain. And actually, I'm working on another film called The Primetime Band, which is about older adults coming back to music later in life. And this band here in Santa Barbara that meets every Tuesday, and then 75 people strong. and then does performances throughout the county. And yesterday I was down at University of Southern California in Los Angeles interviewing a neuroscientist about the importance of music and the brain, and when we're young and when we're old, and how music is a universal language, and how important music can be in our lives. So I look for the Primetime Band next year sometime too. That's another one of those projects. And I love, for me, the intergenerational aspect is really important. These people from the Primetime Band, many of them belong to a group called the Music Band, and they go into third grade classrooms with a van full of instruments and bring those instruments to 8-year-olds who maybe many of them have not ever touched an instrument before, and get to have this excitement of holding an instrument, playing an instrument for the first time. So I love the idea of older adults who are coming back to music, also bringing it to 8-year-olds to maybe for the first time. Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. And it really makes Wes says, yeah, the Alive Inside film is a good one. I agree. And the other one, we could and should sort of do a whole aging topic, list of films, but the Glenn Campbell, I'll Be Me,
Yes.
is another really powerful one where you get to see somebody who's literally incoherent, and he gets on stage and he can play the guitar and sing beautifully. Man, well, this has really been great, Sky. Any additional things that you want to share with the audience that we may have not touched upon today?
Well, I mean, I just think for whoever's on this Zoom session, I think it's really so important to find ways that we can connect with another generation, and whether it is just sitting in a coffee shop with somebody or forming some kind of a like community group discussion, however that works. I think the more that we right now, we're so divided, and I think the way that we can come together is by bringing generations together, and whatever that takes to make that happen, whether it's music or a book discussion or food. I mean, food is always a great one. There's another person that I interviewed, Michael Hebb, who does something called Generations Over Dinner. You bring people together over food, and you have a topic that you talk about. And so, it doesn't have to be something monumental. It can be something very simple. Look, I did a film, never done a film before. If you're passionate about it, you can make anything happen. You just have to have something that you follow your passion and follow through with that. So I think that would be I think that's the words of wisdom for the day. Maybe follow your passion.
Yeah, no, I think you are a great example of that, and your film is a great example of that. And I think that, yeah, we'll figure out. I'm excited to play around with the way that we can screen this and discuss this with our community. But at the end of the day, I think today's discussion was very helpful for me to when you feel like you've got sort of a generational divide, bust that door down. The other thing I like, you mentioned Michael Hebb's his Death Over Dinner discussions are amazing, and I've hosted one of those, but he's really using the dinner table as a great way to kind of break down these walls, give us things to talk about that might be uncomfortable, and I think that's one of the main things for us all to be reminded about is that if you're around the Christmas or holiday dinner table in this month, but if you're not around the table and you're just sitting there at Starbucks, the opportunity to connect the generations is powerful.
Absolutely. And I will say one other thing, because people have asked me, like, what did you learn from working on this film, from interviewing 40 people that were 75 plus? And I would say I learned 3 really important lessons that I have taken with me since I worked on the film. The first and is really that having a sense of purpose is vitally important. And that sense of purpose can change over time. So for many of us, if we, the hardest moment for a lot of people is when they retire. And what does that mean? Because they have lost their identity and their sense of purpose. And I think that whether you're 20 or you're 80, you need to have that sense of purpose, that reason that you get up every day, that reason for being, that drive to keep going. And I think, I just retired from teaching, although I'm teaching part-time, but I'm a professor emeritus. And my sense of purpose is, yeah.
I'm going to interrupt you there because whenever I hear people use the R word, I want to replace that with the G word, which is graduate. So
yeah.
you didn't retire from teaching. You're still teaching. You graduated from teaching in an institution, but you're always going to be a teacher. And I think, and a lot of times when I hear people refer to themselves as a retiree or what have you, and I say, no, you're not a retiree, you're a graduate, it always brings a smile to their face.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I never thought I was ever retiring. I thought that I was, that's why I put it in air quotes, because I will always have, as an artist, I'll always have the next project that I'm thinking of. And yes, I like the term reawakenment, as
I like that
put in there. That's great. But I think that sense of purpose really is all about that. How do we reinvent ourselves? How do we make that a priority, is having that sense of purpose and that direction in our lives? And I think the second thing, which was so important, is really thinking about the fact that there are many times in our lives where we cannot change what's happening around us, but what we can change is our attitude about how we deal with things. And I think that's so important. I looked at many times during the pandemic, I looked at that, we universally we're going through this time together, but how do you reframe like that moment when things are terrible? How do you change that around and make that a positive? So I think our attitude about things is super important.
Yeah. And, like a lot of the discussion topics that we talk about on this platform are very heavy. It's Alzheimer's, dementia, death, dying, losing mobility, and I love your second point, because it's just a reminder that there's nothing that you can do about some of these things, but you can look at the world through a different lens and be more positive.
Absolutely. And I'll give you my own personal example. My partner, Jeff, we were supposed to go to Europe for 9 weeks in the fall, just to, show the film around and get away for a little bit. And he unfortunately fell and had a subdural hematoma, which he had to have surgery on. He's fine. But, we had to cancel our trip. And I could have gotten really depressed about that, but, and this is a first world problem. I always like to preface this by saying this, right? But, instead I decided to reframe that. And I just thought, how many times in my life do I have 9 weeks that I hadn't planned anything for? And wow, I'm working on this other film project instead, and I'm finishing up my book project. And I think, I could have gone into a darker place with my attitude, or I reframe it and I say, he's okay. And we can, I can now do something else. And I think, again, that's like the attitude that we have about how we live our lives really does make a difference in terms of our happiness. And then I think thirdly, and this has been shown in studies recently, it's really important to have a good support system of either friends or family. And it doesn't have to be family. It can definitely be friends. But there was a study that just came out recently about if you have more friends, like you have 7.5 years more, it equates to 7.5 years better life or something like that, versus like it's more detrimental than smoking if you're lonely. There's just, so how do we do that? I looked around. For me personally, when I was teaching and I was so singularly focused, and I was department chair, and I woke up one day and I realized, wow, I don't have very many women friends. Like, I need to have more women friends. And I started doing a women's dinner the first Monday of every month. And I invited all these people and I said, bring your friends. And I now have almost 180 people on that email list of new friends that I would never have met otherwise. But, you know, I think sometimes, you know, it's very easy to be isolated and alone, but what can you do to change that? And it was such a small thing, was just to open up my house one day a month. And it has created this amazing sense of community that I feel, not only do that I feel, but all these women that come feel, and then they don't all come at the same time. The last time I had 75 people there, but you know, it's just lovely, and it's very little effort on my part. So thinking about creative ways that, because as we age, our friend group does dwindle, right? But we have to work a little harder to expand that and to expand it beyond our generation. So at that potluck the last time, there was somebody in her 20s all the way up to somebody in their 90s. And we're all talking, we're all together. Again, it's over food. Food's always a nice thing to bring people together. But it really makes a difference when you set an intention to do something like that. I think that's super important.
Yeah, and it's not easy. You know, I mean, it requires getting outside of the comfort zone. But when you hear Skye's personal stories today, things that are difficult, if we manage to get through them, you can potentially have good outcomes. And the our number one topic on this platform is solo aging. And like your potluck, what I'm always amazed at is that we will bring hundreds of people together who all define themselves as solo agers, or are thinking that someday they may be a solo ager. And I was like, you know, the funny thing is, we got 100 people here all saying the same thing. We're not alone, but we're coming together because we think we're alone, you know. And it's so Skye, this has been an amazing discussion, and I can see we've got several people that agree. And Dinah, I like this discussion as a great reminder of all the choices we still have, even in the midst of accepting limitations. And that's really the goal of trying to do these talks, is just get us all thinking a little bit differently about these chapters in our lives. Hats off to you, Skye. You've done some really great stuff, and I really look forward to your future projects and working with you in the future.
Ditto. I feel the same. And thank you. I just want to thank everyone that came on today to be here, you know, in real time. I just love doing these things. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions, if I can help you with anything in the future. I'm just so grateful to you, Steve, for giving me the opportunity. Thanks so much.
And see, well, hold on, because this always happens when I start winding it up, then some more good questions come in. And let's see, Meg says, do you recommend giving the person you will interview the questions in advance?
Yeah, you know, I did do that. I gave the people the questions in advance. I would go and actually, without any camera gear, just go and sit with them and kind of go over the questions, because I wanted it to be where they knew me and I was their friend, rather than somebody coming in with all that camera gear and all this. It's very difficult to be on the other side of a camera. You know, you should try it sometime so you have some sense of what that's like. But I think when you have that personal connection, it just is so much smoother. And then also, it gave me an opportunity to go over their answers. And one of the things that I learned was to ask the follow-up question. So I didn't know that in the beginning, and I messed up a few interviews on how to go back and re-interview the person, because I realized when I got home and I was looking at the footage, I'm like, why didn't I ask the follow-up question? So having these answers ahead of time sometimes will help you when you are doing the actual interview. That being said, however you can make it happen, even if it's just that it's on the spur of the moment. But I think for me, it helped to give them the questions ahead of time.
And then Sharon, we were talking age is just a number, but I'm curious too. Is Sharon asks, how old was the woman in that amazing yoga pose?
She was 86.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
We all need to continue. And then let's see, Noelle are there any intergenerational living establishments in the DC area? Noelle, send me an email on that one. You know, the concept of a natural occurring retirement community, of which in downtown DC there are many, these apartment buildings where people have lived many years, but they're not age segregated or age exclusive, are sort of intergenerational. But there's a really cool project, and I'll send you the info on it. I should do a follow-up on it. It's a low-income project that is designed for grandparents living with their grandchildren. And it's like everybody who lives in this building is supposed to follow that rule. And I thought that was a real creative way of living together intergenerationally. But any of you out there who know about anywhere in the country about cool intergenerational living projects or intergenerational projects in general, just drop me a line and we'll try to get them on here and they can talk about how they did, just like Sky has. All right. Well, everybody have a good afternoon, and Sky, you have a good morning being out there in yeah. Okay.
Indeed.
Talk to you